Good morning. Good morning, and in Israel, good afternoon. So, as always, we start with today's Hayom Yom. Kufchei Kislev, first day of Hanukkah. So, this is my father, the Frierdiker Rebbe starts. My father, the Rebbe Rashab, would kindle Hanukkah lights between Mincha and Ma'ariv. And that's our custom as well. The time for lighting the Hanukkah lights is Mishetishka Chachama, from the time of sunset, not from the time of three stars, not like Ma'ariv. So from the time of sunset. And that's the time that he did it, and that's the time that we did it, and that we do it. He was not particular whether the doorway was south to north or east to west. You know, we normally try to light the menorah, like in Shul, we light it in the south, because in the Beis HaMikdash, the south was the place of the Mizbeach. But in the home, it's not so important. That's what this is telling us. He was not strict on that. Now, Hanera Solala is said after kindling all the lights. He would sit near the lights for half an hour, except Fridays when he did not stay that long. He took care that the lights burned at least 50 minutes. And we have from our Rebbe, which has sources in previous Rebbeim, that sitting in front of the lights for a period of time, one should listen to the lights. The lights have a story to tell. And the story is ultimately one of the great Talmidim of the Magid, I don't remember his name, he says that the light of Hanukkah is a glimmer of the organus, the light that was hidden away at the beginning of creation. At the beginning of creation, before Adam Rishon was on this planet, before he came into being, there was only light. And then after the sin of the Eitz Hadas, the light became hidden. And that light became hidden, ganuz, in the Torah. And that hidden light, which is a light, ultimately the light of Mashiach. In fact, I saw on the page I have in front of me here today, that Mashiach is Rosh Hashanah, the beginning words, Madlikin Shemaina Yemei Shemenus Yemei Chanukah Mem Shin Yud Ches Mashiach. We light the 8 days of Hanukkah, and the lights of Hanukkah are a glimmer of the organus. The organus is hidden, the light which will be revealed in Yis Hashem in the time of the very near future. Okay, Eric Gimel. So we're going to start exploring now the structure of the godly soul. We've learned that in the very beginning of the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe tells us that in the Jewish person, there are two souls. And the second soul is a chelek elokah mimal. It's a part of God himself. And in understanding the structure of the soul, basically what the Alter Rebbe is doing for us, I kind of liken this to you're sending a soldier on a mission, right? All of our souls have been sent down here on a mission. The mission being to illuminate the darkness, to make a dwelling place for Hashem, etc. Now, before the soldier can go on the mission, he has to go into basic training. As I said yesterday, one of the ways that people look at this, one of my sons calls it the training manual, the basic training manual for a Beinoni, how to become a Beinoni. So the soldier has to go to basic training, and amongst the things that the soldier learns in basic training is the weapons that he or she has in order to fight the war against the darkness. And the structure, our soul, our godly soul, is that weapon. And so to understand how to utilize it, how to bring it to the fore, and how to use it effectively, one has to understand it. The way the soldier has to understand his weapon, how to load it, how to grease it, how to make sure the trigger works, etc., etc. So this starts a progression of parakim into the structure of the godly soul, which will ultimately explain and give us the ability to understand why the basic principle of the Tanya is that the brain can rule over the heart, because the soul itself has various levels. Chabad is the brain, Chagas is the heart, and Malkus is the feet or the mouth. So we have to start to understand, and that's what Perek Gimel begins, the structure of the soul. This is page Zion in the classical Tanya, and page 64, excuse me, in Lessons in Tanya.
Rabbi, could you please mute everyone?
Sure. Okay. But please do come off mute if you have a question or a comment. Perek Gimel. All the levels of the soul, which in general, yesterday we explained that the soul has three general levels: nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Now, those of you who have learned a little bit more know that there are 5 levels of the soul. We have chai and yechida, but we're leaving them aside. And the reason we're leaving them aside for the moment is because it's these 3 levels, and only these 3 levels, which are invested in the body. The other 2 are called makif, more transcendent, and we'll begin to understand that later in our process. But these are the things, this is the equipment that we have inside our body to deal with the animal soul. And dealing with the animal soul and what that means will be, of course, explained as we unroll this Tanya, this scroll of Tanya. So the soul has 3 levels. This is the soul which in Hebrew is called meslabish b'pnimis, the levels of the soul which are enclosed in the inner part of a person. These are nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Now each of these levels, these 3 levels, kalula me'eser, bechinas, they include 10 categories. Now 10 categories is an allusion to the 10 spheros, as he says now. These 10 categories are keneged eser spheros elyonis. They're opposite or reflection of. One of the understandings of it says, "Nasa odem b'tzalmenu kedemusenu," let us create man in our image, just as God has it manifest from his singularity 10 spheros and brought them out from himself in order to create the world. So this soul, which we gave a mashal yesterday about the seminal drop, which emerges from one singular point and then flourishes and spreads itself out in the body, also spreads itself out in a manner of 10. These are called the 10 koichos, the 10 powers which reflect the 10 spheros. And so each level of the soul includes 10. This introduces the notion of inter-inclusion, that every singular sphera, it has inter-included within it all the other 9 spheros. It's just that particular sphera, let's say chesed. So that chesed is the dominant, but in it are all the other 9. Of course, we see this in the midos very plainly in Sfiras HaOmer, when we count the Sfiras HaOmer, where we're dealing only with the spheros of the midos, chagas. Each one of them includes each other. So and as I said, this is important because this is all training, instruction, so that we can go out and fight the battle. We need to know how we're structured and what equipment we have. So we have 10 spheros. We have 3 levels of the soul, each one inclusive of 10 spheros, so in the supernal spheros, which these 10 spheros that are in our soul, or also called the 10 koichos, are nostalgical. They descend from the 10 spheros up above. And these 10 spheros are divided and compartmentalized. We can think about them in either group of 2 or a group of 3. These are shtayim shehem sholosh. These are 2 groups. The first group is called sholosh imohes, the 3 mothers. Now the 3 mothers is Chabad. Why is it called a mother? Bina is sometimes called the mother, and father is sometimes called the Chokhmah, right? And Chokhmah gives over to Bina. The male is the giving over, the female is the receptive in general terms. But in general also, Chabad gives over to the Midos. So all three of them are called, the three mothers, Shehen Sholosh Imohes. They give over and receive down here below. The Sheva Kafulas, and then we have the seven double ones. The seven double ones are the Midos. The Midos themselves are doubled. They have a Panemius and they have a Chatzonius. There's the inside of the Midah, the outside of the Midah. We actually spoke about this before, about the soul in general. A soul has two ways of expressing itself. It can express its inner dimension, which is called the Panemius of the Neshama, or it can express its outer dimension, which is the Acharayim. We explained yesterday that when a person is disaligned in any way, small way, big way, with God's will, that disalignment, though it's expressed through and largely caused by the animal soul, godliness is invested also in the animal soul. What part of godliness is invested in the animal soul is called the Acharayim, the backside of godliness. And the Panemius of the soul is invested in Kedusha. So similarly down here, the soul, since the soul is echoing godliness, right? The soul is, we're made in his image, 10 spheros, 10 powers. So the soul also has this notion of Sheva Kafula, 7 double ones. The Midos are the Panemius of each Midah and the outside of each Midah. So he explains, Pirish Chochma Ubina Vidas, the Sholish Amohis, the 7 mothers who give birth. That's why they're called, the 3 mothers who are called Chabad, they give birth to the Midos, and therefore they're called mothers. So these mothers, Chochma Bina Vidas, and these Shivas Yemei Habinyan, and the 7 Midos correspond to the 7 days of building the creation. Hesed is the first day of the week. It's interesting, a couple of them correspond to English. Sunday. So the sun is an expression, it's light, it gives out, it gives forth. Sunday. That's the meat of Hesed, which gives forth. Gevura holds back. And in French, it's the moon, Lundi. Lundi is Monday in French, which is connected with the moon. I haven't worked it out amongst all the 7 days of the week, but it's at least in those two is very clear. Sunday giving out, which is Chesed, Lundi, the moon, which is a reflective light, which is not originating from its own.
Excuse me, Rabbi?
Yeah.
The Chitzonius and the Pnimius of each of the 7 Kfulos, is it the same as the Zela Umas Zeh, like the shadow and the...
The Zela Umas Zeh refers very specifically to evil. Just like he created good, he created evil. Now, the relationship, or I could say, there's a point which you bring out, which is where does that evil come from, that negative Le'umazeh? It does come from and associated with the Acharayim of the soul as opposed to the Panemius. That's true.
So when he says Kfulos, he just means the Chitzonius and the Pnimius, and it does not also mean the, like Chesed, like Yishmael and Avram.
No, Chesed and Yishmael is 2 different meanings. Chesed, Avram is Chesed, and Yishmael is his son, which is Gevurah. Right. It doesn't mean Chesed and Gevurah. It means in one Midah, the Panemius of the Midah and the externality of the Midah. So the Midos themselves are called Sheva. They're Sheva Midos. And those Sheva Midos are connected the 7 days of creation. Because we have to put in an obvious word from Hanukkah here. The question is asked about the menorah. Why do we put, if we're celebrating a certain miracle, the first day of oil was not a miracle, there was oil. The second day, when the miracle started, was the second day. So there really should be 7 days if you're celebrating the miraculous, the miracle. Why are they 8? So related to here, Sheva is the days of Binyan. Sheva is the days of the week. Sheva is the Shemitah cycle, 7 years. It's the world of nature, 7. 8 is above nature. 8 is above. So the Hanukkah is in its entirety, including day 1, is a revelation of a miraculous. Of course, day 1 also celebrates the miraculous victory of the Hashmonaim over the Greeks. And so all 8 days, the reason it's 8 is because 8 is the supernatural, and 7 is only, as we're saying here, Sheva Simeha Binyan, the natural, the way the world is built. And what are the 7? Hesed, Gevura, Tiferes, etc. Right? So that's the way it is in the Spheros. There's said there are Chabad gives birth. That's why it's called the mother. To Sheva Kafulim, 7 midos, which have a Penimis and an Acharayim. So similarly it is in the soul of a person. Again, we're on a path which just started to understand the structure of the soul so that we understand the equipment that we have as warriors in the war against the forces of darkness and the illumination of light. So similarly, when it comes to a person, if these 2 groups are divided into 2, Seichel u'Midas, right? Seichel and Midas. Now remember, Seichel, all of these, each of the 10 koichos, includes each of the other. So Seichel itself is Koilel Chochma, Bina, and Das, as 3 separate things, Chochma, Bina, and Das, and 3 inter-included things. Chochma Sheba Chochma, Bina Sheba Chochma, Das Sheba Chochma. And this will become important as we go further. So we'll leave it for the time being, but inter-inclusion is going to be extremely, it's totally important. How it is that the brain can rule over the heart is ultimately because the midos are in a seminal embryonic state in the brain. So they're not 2 different worlds at all, but to be continued. Excuse me. The hamidos, okay, what are the midos? Now we're dealing with the godly soul here. So we're talking about chesed is Ava. We start with Avas Hashem, that's chesed. Upachte v'riose, and then we have fear, and we have awe, and we have beautification, which is Gevura and Tiferes. The Chabad nikra imohes, and Chabad is called the mother, u'makalamidos, because it gives birth to the midos. It's the source of the midos. Midos hein toildos Chabad, because the midos are children, offspring of Chabad. So that's the first thing to this is an important sense. The midos are children of Chabad. So just like a child carries the essence of the parent, the midos, the godly midos that we have, carry the essence or the deeper sense, the deeper part of our soul, which is Chabad. And if you go work your web, Chabad carries, in the seminal point of Chochmah, carries the ayin up above, which is the Ein Sof. So this is a structural what's the word? It's outlining for us very clearly the inter-inclusion, meaning the containment of one thing within another, so that ultimately Ein Sof is included in Chabad, and Midos include Chabad, which means they include Ein Sof. So our Midos, our godly Midos, are Ein Sof. They're expressions of that which has no limit. First thing to know about, and this, if you could sort of, back to my mashal of a soldier, his commanding officer would say, you need to know, you soldiers, you are vessels of unlimited energy and unlimited skill when you learn how to master the equipment that you have been given. The explanation of this is, turn the page in the classical time. It's the intellect, which is in the nefesh hamaskeles. That's how the abbreviation is. The part of the soul which is intellectual. Shehu hamaskil kol davar, which you could translate it, understands everything. I don't know how they translate it in English, but maskil goes deeper than that. I'm going to say 3 things. There's bina, but there's seichel, intellect. And then there's the koyach ha-seichel, the power, the soul power, which gives rise to intellect. And then there's what's called hamaskil, which is the more unconscious, deeper level of intellect that gives power to the power called maskil, which gives power to actually understanding it. So I hope that's clear that there are levels here. As you go deeper and deeper and deeper, hamaskil is a very deep level. And one who's maskil kol davar, this is like the root of seichel. And the root of seichel encompasses the ability to, the koyach ha-seichel, the ability to understand kol davar, hanikra b'shem chokmah, shehu hamaskil. So that maskil, that deep power, which is the source of being, the source to understand everything, is called hamaskil, and it's called chokmah. Chokmah, if you look at the word chokmah, here you have to see it, inside. Chokhmah is koyach ma. That's how you spell the word. Chokhmah, you just invert the first two letters, you get koyach ma, the power of what? We'll see what he said, and then we'll explain that. When that power of what comes into actuality, that one understands through one's intellect, to understand something very clearly, and deeply, through some specific thing that you're understanding, which is understood in your seichel, nikra bina. Then it's called bina. So just to quickly explain this, we start with hamaskil, that part of the soul which is designed to connect with intellect. And that part of the soul which is designed to connect with intellect, we call chokmah, the koyach ma. It's designed to connect with intellect as it comes down into actual chokmah, and then and this is a good example, the panemius of chokmah and the externality of chokmah, right? We said each of them has a panemius and an akarayim, an inside and an outside, a top and a bottom. So the top of chokmah, it says chokmah me'ayin timotzeh. Chokmah is found. It kind of drops out like a matzia, like something you find a dollar bill on the street. Where did it come from? You have no idea where it comes from. Chokmah comes from a place we have no idea where it comes from, but it contains that sense of awe, of beyond awe, that sense of elikus, unfathomable elikus, which we call the ayin. So the chokmah contains that ayin. That's the panemius of chokmah, right? That's the koyach ma, the power that you can only express yourself by saying, what is it? I don't understand it. It's also very much correlated with humility. Nachnu ma, Moshe and Aaron were independent, and the two are related. The path to being able to grasp some of the ayin, some of the ma, is to be a ma, is to be a nothing, is to be completely open and not encumbered by any predefined limitations. If one can be that kind of a mind that's totally open, not encumbered by any predefined definitions, then you can grasp something of that which is beyond definition, which is the ayin. And that's called koyach, that's the panemius of chokmah. And then the chitzonius of chokmah, the second dimension of chokmah, is its ability to bring that down and infuse some of that into the next midah, which is bina. So that's an explanation. So the internality, which is the amaskil, the capability for understanding before that capability becomes a revealed power. And where does it become a revealed power? In the brain. And of course, this is way before thought. We're not talking about mental language yet. We're not, which thought is expressed some kind of mental language. You're thinking in words, you're thinking in notes, you're thinking in motions, all the arts, etc., which have to do with, actually bringing into precision that which is coming from a world of no precision, a world where there's nothing that can be tangibilized at all. So that's koyach chokmah. The koyach chokmah, that is chokmah, koyach ma, the power of the ineffable. And that comes down into actuality and gets expressed in tangibility in the power of bina. And I'm on the third line now. I said this before, but I'm saying it again. Where one understands in his intellect, lahavin davar la'ashure, to understand something clearly, and to take that chokmah and to understand it in something that's now we would call it intellectualized. I've got it in my intellect. And that intellectualization, or getting it in your intellect, or getting it in your seichel, is called bina. V'hein hem ava'em, and they are called father and mother. Chochmah is the mashpia to bina, which is the receiver, that's father and mother. And they, now it's important to understand, we started with the Ein Sof itself, with the ayin, the ineffable, the intangible, drawn down into a certain level of tangibility in Chochmah, the very first power of Seichel, and that never gets lost. It just takes different forms, where it becomes now embedded in Bina, and then becomes embedded that what Bina is the mother of the Midos. Amayledis Avos Hashem, which gives birth to Avos Hashem, V'yirosei v'pachtoi, and awe and fear. Period. What I mean by period is that this is the end of today's Tanya. So this is the beginning of a road we're on to understand the structure of the soul in order that we can utilize those powers like a soldier in battle to fight the wars of Hashem and to bring Mashiach. Okay. Questions? Comments? A lot of people here. Must be something rolling around.
I have a comment.
Sure.
That structure that you just described, the seven and the three mothers and the seven children.
Yep.
And you also call them the seven doubles.
Correct.
This is exactly parallel to the layout of the Hebrew alphabet. There are three mother letters that give rise to all the letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shin. There are seven double letters that have two sounds. That's why they're called double.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll stop you. The two sounds, there's the panemius, the inner part of the letter, and the outer part of the letter. Very nice. Yeah. Okay.
And that's all. That's this part of the
What
structure.
Are those? What are those?
Structure of reality. It's the structure of reality. So everything copies that scheme, because
Beautiful.
everything is made from the letters.
Okay.
What are those letters that have two sounds?
Some of them we know, some of them we don't know. But if you look, and there would be base is one, the first one, base and vase. They are called soft sounds and hard sounds. And if you look at it, and the next one offhand would be a sub and a tub, same letter, soft and hard. Right. And there are Dalet actually has two sounds. We don't know the other sound.
Aleph also there's a hard sounding Aleph, the way some of the Yemenites pronounce it, and then there's the no sound that we give it only with a vowel.
But if you look in the Arya Kaplan Zohar, you'll see a list of all the letters, these double letters. Shin is not one of the letters because it's one of the mother letters.
That's interesting, even though it has two sounds.
Yeah, but it really doesn't, because both sounds are really this. If you look at the soft sound versus the hard sound, you'll see that the soft sound can last forever, whereas the hard sound ends right away.
It's abrupt.
Right,
hard.
Abrupt.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Again, we've just started a journey to understand the structure of the soul. And I'll say a bechein, and the so what is the hugest so what, is to understand what equipment we have been God-given in order to accomplish the mission that he's given us to accomplish. Anyone else want to say anything before we end?
Oh, like pay and fei. Like fei could last forever, and pay has to end.
Right. Pay is one of those letters.
Sure.
Okay.
And those are also the source of the 7 days of the week. Each day has two sides: the day with sun, the day without sun. It's one day. Again, the reality reflects the alphabet. our alphabet.
Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful.
Anybody else? That's very nice. Thank you so much for those ads.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow, Emir Sasha.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.